The American Freedom Radio Network proudly presents, live from Phoenix, Arizona, The Truth Denied Talk Radio with host Roxy Lopez. Join us here every Friday from 7 to 9 Central for topics you won't hear on mainstream news, such as chemtrails, GMOs, Morgellons disease, and much more. Humanity is 7 billion strong. We are the majority. If you would like to speak to the host, the call-in number is 218-339-8525. And now, live from the Valley of the Sun, your host, Roxy Lopez.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Truth Denied Talk Radio. I'm your host, Roxy Lopez. We are live from Phoenix, Arizona. And I'm real excited to introduce you to a couple of people today. By the way, the last show that we did, which was the very first show we ever did on American Freedom Radio, was absolutely spectacular. In our archives on our website, thetruthDenied.com, oh my gosh, it's blowing up. It has stirred up a great deal of controversy. So for those of you who are listening tonight, if you like that show, there is more of it on this show. We just are ever expanding our knowledge base here in regards to Morgellons disease, chemtrails, GMOs. We have an expert on today. For the first hour, we're going to be asking Barb Peterson from farmwars.info. So if you want to go onto her website, that's farmwars.info. And she is an amazing woman, activist. We're going to hear all about it. The second hour, we're going to have Russ Tanner from the Global Skywatch. He has his own story regarding geoengineering, SAG programs, etc. This is a really big picture, and I hope that we are doing a good job of informing you, the public, in relationship to many of these issues that really all sort of are colliding right now. Geoengineering has everything to do with GMOs, has everything to do with weather modification and the droughts or severe weather we're experiencing. And of course, this all comes under the nice umbrella of what I call the New World Order agenda. So this is a global agenda. That's why you're seeing it all over the world. Anyway, I really would like to welcome to the show and let her do the talking, and I'll shut up. Welcome to the show, Barb Peterson. How are you? Hello? Okay, I just got a message that Barb Peterson was cut off, and our producer's getting her back on the air. So hold on just a moment. Seems to be happening a lot in the activism communities, by the way. I'm seeing a lot of this, and our producers just let us know that she is back, and we're going to keep getting her back. Barbara, welcome to the show. What happened?
Hi, Roxy. Hey, I don't know. I hope it wasn't user error, and it might have been.
Oh, wow. Shh, don't tell. we need to make this deep and dark from a secret location. Barbara, welcome to the show. And before I even have you go any further, I just want to thank you for taking the time to join us this evening. I know that you are super, super busy, and I just have to thank you. Thank you for being such a great comrade out there. Really appreciate it.
Well, you know, Roxy, I always love talking with you, and it's so important, I feel, to get with people of like mind so we can go ahead and share the information that we've received so we can just get the word out. And you do such a great job of doing that, and I love your new format. It's great.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it seems like the listeners really, really dig it. It was just, the right time. I'm so grateful to be part of the American Freedom Radio family now. It's just been really great. I didn't mind where I was either, but it's just the Truth Denied is experiencing some growing pains right now. So, hey, what can I say? So, Barbara, for those listeners who are not familiar with you and your organization that you had and run, which is Farm Wars, and for those of you who want to follow on the internet, it's farmwars.info. But for those of you, before we really jump into the nitty-gritty of the right now, because it's getting pretty spooky out there as far as the control factor goes with Monsanto and these new seeds and everything, but Before we jump into that, can we get a little bit of a background from you, how you got into this activism, when it started for you? Just a brief summation of how you got to be, the famous Barbara Peterson that you are.
Famous? I don't think so. In my own mind. Oh, anyway. No. But I actually got into this out of necessity. I worked for the Department of Corrections for 10 years, and after 10 years, let me tell you, it was enough. And I came out here to Oregon, and through a series of events, I had to start studying genetically modified organisms, and the main reason I did was because I had developed a very bad skin reaction. And this skin reaction started on my leg, went all the way up, crossed my shoulders, down my other leg. Roxy, I was in a mess. This was like the worst case of poison oak, oozy, itchy that you've ever seen in your life. It kept me awake. I didn't even want to live. It was horrible. So I stopped eating, and I had to start researching and finding out what I could eat. So I started with water, and I lost 60 pounds. I had raw fruits and vegetables, and then I started looking at my processed foods, and somebody told me about GMOs, and I started researching that. And then I got with Susan Bardosh, which is our Pod Pustai's wife and partner, and he was famous for 1996 actually being the whistleblower on genetically modified potatoes. So he was the first one. He was the guy that got me, to where I am, him and Susan. So, and I started understanding, and then I started realizing, I started introducing foods into my diet a little bit at a time. And every time I ate something that was for sure genetically modified, guess what? I started to break out again. So there's a connection there. And then I started understanding that, just about everything I had been told was a lie, and nothing was as it seemed. So then the research just started growing from there. Basically, I buy hardly any processed foods whatsoever. If it's processed, I have to go to great lengths to do the research on the companies and find out what I'm buying, who I'm buying it for. And I have been skin disease free now for several years. So it was a matter of necessity.
Understood. Now, just a quick question for you. When you say that you had these breakouts and so forth, now this isn't to be confused with Morgellons disease, correct?
Okay, here we go. This is my question.
Sorry.
Okay, let's just jump right in with both feet, shall we?
Okay.
This is what's going on. I did the research and did it. Now, on Morgellons, I had some of the symptoms, and some of those symptoms is a horrible, itchy, open sore that simply will not go away. Now, I did not have any of the fibers coming out of my skin. Now, I related what I had to genetic modification, and I believe that it's the process of the genetic modification that actually does this, or it could have been the toxins that go in it. But your guest last time I listened, and his name was Dr. Will Spencer, and he had mentioned that there are overlapping technologies, and that is so true, because all of these technologies, biotechnology, nanotechnology, synthetic biology, they're all overlapping and they're all being used. And generally, if one is being used, the other is being used right along with it. So we've got all of this stuff that's hitting us. We've got the chemtrails. They're using nano materials in the chemtrails. And nanomaterials are so tiny that they can get in just about anywhere. We have absolutely no idea what these things are going to do. Now, is it possible that through the overlapping of synthetic biology, nanotechnology, and biotechnology, that our systems are being overloaded with this stuff, and certain people are developing that type of a reaction to it, to where these synthetic fibers start coming out? I believe that's absolutely possible.
Yeah, and you're not the first one either. You know, we've spoken before on the show several times in the past 12 months about, the idea that genetically modified organism is the disease, is Morgellons. That Morgellons is a genetically modified organism disease. And of course, the genetically modified foods. But, you said something about the, in reference to what Dr. Spencer had said, the overlapping bio, nano, synthetic, and so forth. Can we hammer those out one by one? Can we talk about what is the bio part? You've already kind of alluded to what the nano part of it is. Nano is basically, for those who don't know, is just it's a size. A nano is referring to a size of something. Do you know what size that is? All I know is that it's not identifiable by the human eye.
Oh, yeah. It's
a nanoparticle.
I can't remember. It's like something, I don't remember offhand. It's so tiny. It's like 0.001. I'm probably not right on that, of a millimeter. It's so absolutely tiny that
well, you can breathe it, right?
You can breathe it, and it'll go straight into your organs.
Right.
Into everything. It goes into your bloodstream.
Well, and wouldn't you agree with me that when we're referring to SAG, which is, the aerosol spraying programs and so forth, or the chemtrails or geoengineering, whatever anybody wants to call it, I call it chemtrails because that's what I call it. But anyway, the nanoparticles that are being used are supposedly, the aluminum and aluminum particles. So let's start there with the aluminum. Now, aluminum, obviously, we've got a lot of reports about Alzheimer's. Aluminum in the brain, goes right into the system. We don't know that if it's being caused by chemtrails, but we do have a real uptick in the numbers of Alzheimer's disease, along with many others. But let's say with this nanoparticulates that are in the chemtrails, and obviously toxifying the human body, etc. What else are we looking at as far as the contents of what nano aluminum is used for, and how does that play into? All right, how does that play into the crops? Let's say.
Well, okay, the aluminum, let's talk about, aluminum and how it gets into our system. Well, I found a connection between fluoride and aluminum. Fluoride, which is being put in our water supply, and the aluminum, which is being sprayed, goes into the water supply, and then the fluoride allows the aluminum to cross the blood-brain barrier.
Uh-huh. And what does that mean in layman's terms?
It means Alzheimer's.
Gotcha.
Because the aluminum is, it doesn't want to do too much. But when it combines with fluoride pushes it right through into your brain and specifically can, I won't say it causes, I'm not a doctor, it can cause Alzheimer's, and there are instances where it's been proven that that's what happens. So the willy-nilly spraying of aluminum all over the place and the into the fluoridated water, it's a two-part mix. I don't think any of these things are actually intended as just this one thing is going to do it. It's mixes of things. It's 2- and 3-part mixes. Okay, We've got the fluoride in the water. That is doing certain things. That is making us complacent, it's making us sick, it's hurting our teeth instead of benefiting them. But what people don't understand is if you take a combination of that aluminum, nano aluminum, being sprayed out of the sky into that fluoridated water, and then we ingest it, what is happening? And nobody's going to talk about that in the mainstream media, but it's scientifically proven that that's what happens.
Okay. So that's one part of this. And then, of course, everyone's going to ask, well, I want to kind of stay on track here with the biotechnology and the synthetic biology, and we'll save the synthetic because that gets very, very interesting. That plays into a whole nother field of what they're working with. But as far as the spraying goes, let's just talk about, the chemtrailing. What's the use of these programs? I mean, what the hell are they doing with it? I mean, my understanding at this point, and you probably will agree with me, we agree on a lot of things, the controlling of the weather, and you've even mentioned it, controlling the weather. You can control the agriculture as well. Can we talk about that in a format that also introduces the idea of why Monsanto's introducing abiotic stress resistant seed patents and drought resistant corn? This all one plays into the other, doesn't it?
Exactly. And you know that I sent you that video came straight from the mouth of MIT. Okay. And this is on geoengineering, and it's an instructional lecture, and it is given as what we are doing for geoengineering to supposedly control the climate because of global warming, what we have been doing and what we are doing and what we intend to do in the future. And in it, you just listen to them just nonchalantly. The woman nonchalantly explains that, yes, they've been doing cloud seeding operations for years, and geoengineering is definitely on the plate. And they're talking about sulfur dioxide, releasing that. However, in the patents, you'll see that there are a lot more things than sulfur dioxide being sprayed. And in there, she specifically admitted, rather quietly, that what the geoengineering program does is it causes drought and cold in certain areas. And South America, according to their plan, is going to be hit with this drought, the way they've outlined certain plans. They have different plans that they're looking to implement. And one plan will do this, another plan will do that. But the one that they're really looking at is the one that's going to cause drought in South America. Well, I don't really believe in a whole heck of a lot of coincidence, and I do believe that other people do know a lot more than I do about what's going on, so I have to connect the dots. So now we have Monsanto, and Monsanto comes up with their new drought-resistant corn.
Hold that thought, Barb. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, let's talk about that resistant corn. Welcome back to the show. You're on the Truth Tonight Talk Radio. Our guest today is Barb Peterson from Farm Wars. And we were just getting into the control factor that Monsanto has over the agriculture, and definitely how chemtrails plays into all of this. So welcome back to the show, Barbara. So what were you were just going to talk about that, the control factor?
Well, it's major control. Initially, we thought that their aluminum, that Monsanto had an aluminum resistance gene, and that was somehow related to the chemtrails. However, through more research, I found out that it wasn't Monsanto that had this aluminum resistance gene. It was the USDA in Brazil, and that was probably not directed at the chemtrail conditions. However, upon further digging, I did find a Monsanto patent that it's the daddy of patents. And that is for basically all abiotic stresses, including, let's see, I've got cold, drought, flood, heat, UV stress, ozone increases, acid rain, pollution, salt stress, heavy metals, mineralized soils, and other abiotic stresses. Okay, so they've covered it. So they've got this gigantic patent, and what they're doing is they're going through all of these different pieces of food. They're going through corn, they're going through soy, they're going through from apples to zucchini. And they're planning, according to this patent, on doing this to all of them. Every single food product we have. That's what they're planning on doing. So if you have the weather manipulation, the geoengineering that is creating drought in a certain area, you can bet dollars to donuts Monsanto is going to be right there with their drought-tolerant patent.
Right.
If you've got flooding in another area, Monsanto is going to be right there with their abiotic stress patent that they'll come up with for soy or some such thing that can overcome a flood. So this is what they're doing. And to top that off, they're going around buying up all of the major seed companies, like Seminus Seeds, for one. That was about the biggest seed supplier for people getting organic, traditional, any kind of seeds. In fact, I was going through and making my non-biotech safe seed supplier list, and I was calling these companies up on the phone, and I called one company, and I can't, since what I'm going to say, I didn't get permission to say, so I'm just going to say my source, told me that Seminus Seeds, Monsanto is starting to cut back on the garden seeds that Seminus Seeds is supplying because they're not making enough money. Okay, so number one, it looks like the boycott's working. However, what this does is it tightens up the control grid. I mean, he told me that there are certain heirloom seeds that Seminus has that they want to keep selling because they're the only place that they can get them. So if Monsanto continues to buy up all these seed companies that have all of these rare seeds, where does that leave us? That leaves our heirloom seeds in Monsanto's vault. And if they decide to pull and to not even sell these things anymore, and who would want to buy them anyway from Monsanto, they're done. They're over.
Yeah,
so where does that leave us?
It would be a double-edged sword, wouldn't it, if they were in control of all the heirloom seeds and organic seeds and rare seeds, like you said, and then all of a sudden they were the only owners, and those of us who really do not care for Monsanto and for various reasons would now have to purchase product. It probably costs a lot of money on top of it because they're not stupid as far as what they would sell heirloom seeds to all of us for. So that'd be really tough. That'd be a real tough move. But you make a good point. For those, there are some people out in the listening audience, I am sure, don't understand, and let's clarify something for them, why this is so important, these heirloom seeds. Because, Barbara, your studies show that the seeds that Monsanto is making, the crops don't reproduce seeds. So this is my understanding of your work. So agriculture farmers have to continue purchasing seeds every season. There are no seeds to replant and so forth and so forth. So there would be, in other words, companies like Monsanto, if they decided they didn't want to sell seeds, eventually we're going to run out of food, wouldn't we? We wouldn't have any seeds. We wouldn't have anywhere to purchase seeds other than Monsanto.
Roxy, I think you're talking about the Terminator seed at that point, but that hasn't been unleashed full force as of yet. This first, what we've got are the seeds that actually will reproduce. But what they're reproducing is genetically modified, and it's not consistent, and it's not true. So Monsanto comes in, and they have this stewardship agreement, and they say that they cannot be sued if any other crops are contaminated. And
in other words, they're saying if an organic crop gets contaminated with genetically modified seeds or plants, that Monsanto can't be sued for that. Is that correct?
No, and they will sue for patent infringement. Okay, so they actually, at this point in time, it's my opinion that at this point in time, they want the contamination. So putting the Terminator gene in at this point is not on the high plan here, because they want the contamination. Once the contamination has reached the tipping point and it's not going to come back, then they can institute broad Terminator technology in which there will be no viable seeds at all. But first, you have to get control of everything before you hit the Terminator switch.
I understand. Okay, that makes perfect sense because there's a lot of hearsay about the Terminator seeds and this and that. So you're making absolute sense. So basically they're doing the GM seeds, and then they would love cross-contamination to happen. Yes. Then full contamination. Then they can do Terminator seeds. Then they can own the planet. And who's letting them do this?
Oh, the USDA, the major terrorist organization. I honestly consider the USDA a terrorist organization. They have not only facilitated this takeover, they have actively pursued it. They have threatened, they have coerced, and they are still doing it to get biotech all over the planet through free trade threats, through threats to ruin other countries' economies, all along with Monsanto right there and the other biotech companies following along.
How long do you think this will take to officially contaminate all the crops all over the world? I mean, or let's just talk about the U.S. How long do you think it would take to contaminate all crops across the United States?
Well, considering approximately 80% of our processed food contains GMOs, they're pretty much on their way. I wouldn't even venture a guess as to say how long it would take, but if you consider the fact that if this doesn't get stopped, that it's going to expand exponentially. I mean,
Understood.
How far does a bee go? It can travel 6 miles. They just did the alfalfa. They're going the major crops. Corn is horrible with cross-pollination. I mean, everything's going to get, messed up with corn. Alfalfa is a perennial crop. Okay, once you plant that, then you don't replant for another, say, 4 to 6 years. So you have that genetically modified crop, and then they say, oh, you're not supposed to let it flower. If anybody has ever bought a bale of hay for an animal, what the producers try and do is they try and get it before it flowers. But if you've got 100 acres of alfalfa, you mean to tell me you're going to go through there and make sure not one of those has flowered? That's not possible. When you buy a bale of hay and they try and cut everything before it flowers anyway, you're still going to find flowers in your alfalfa hay. So what they're saying that you have to do to stop cross-pollination is impossible. So they know it's going to happen. They know it's going to cross-pollinate. And personally, I believe that our only hope is for each individual is to start learning what the difference in seeds are. Start learning what an heirloom seed is. Start learning how to grow and protect your stuff so that it is not contaminated with something blowing in the air or a bee coming over and pollinating your stuff with genetically modified organisms.
Right, and to play devil's advocate here, what do folks do who are working 2 jobs and they have children and they don't even have enough time to have a basil plant in their kitchen window for fear of it dying? How are we going to, I mean, we can educate, that's not a problem, but how are some of these families, how are they actually going to grow and when do they have the time to do that, to grow food or learn about seeds and learn about what's good, what's not good, and grow some of this and people who don't have yards and things like that? I mean, what's the solution here? How do I want to know in my local community, because we're teaching people in the local communities here, and that's a question that comes up. So what's the answer for those who seriously don't have time due to this economy, who are working a couple of jobs?
That's a serious question, and it's something that everybody has to think about, in my opinion, because there are things. Number one, throw away the TV clicker. There's other things to be doing. Number 2, find somebody. If there's a Farmago and I just went on. There's more and more sites cropping up of its farm to consumer, where you can get on and find out if anybody's growing local in your area and getting a basket delivered to your house.
Now that's farm. What's it called?
Farmigo.
Farmigo.
Yeah,
and that's the
Farmigo.
Farmigo. I'm glad you spent it because I would have spelled it a different way. Okay, so that's farmigo.com.
I believe it's .com.
Okay, I'll look it up. I'll write an article about it. We're going to put the whole show in an article, so I'll definitely get with that. And that's farm to consumer. So,
yeah.
And so you have your local farmer, but does the person have to do research on that farm to make sure that they're not a genetically modified local farm, or are most small local farms not genetically modified crops?
Well, I'll tell you, most people that I have talked to, and I've talked to a whole lot of people, a whole lot of seed people, and I say, who are you growing? Who is growing your seeds and all that? They are more than happy to tell you who they are, where they are, and most people that are into organics and heirlooms, they are so proud of it that they will stand up and say, yes, it's me, this is what I do, and they will show you or tell you. I personally believe if you have to put it in writing, then something's missing. If I can't honestly, believe somebody when they honestly tell me this is the truth and this is what I am doing, then anything in writing isn't going to make any difference, because that person's word means nothing anyway if they're lying, and they're not going to stop just by putting it in writing. So if it looks like it's not that difficult, if it looks like a good place, talk to the person, say, hey, how do you do your food? What do you use pesticides on? And they'll be more than happy to tell you. And it doesn't take any more than 5 minutes to call somebody up, get a phone number, call somebody up, just have a talk with them one-on-one, and find out what they do. There's other things that you can do in a small area. Mm-hmm. That, if you're really, really pressed for time, there's certain things you can do. Maybe try a little herb garden in the your windowsill. Just put it in there, and just while you're washing your hands at the sink, put a little water in it. Mm-hmm. Keep it alive.
Yeah, a little bit of sunlight and so forth and everything. And then I also am involved in doing some research here for our local Arizona community. And, we've got extreme weather here, but nevertheless, we do get sunlight, and we just don't get a lot of rain. So we would have to, water the crops ourselves and things like that, but a community garden. And so a lot of people have written into our organization about community gardens, where you just basically go to your local city council or your local city building, actually go to your mayor, your city manager, and ask them if they can provide like a small piece of land that's not being used for a community garden. And 9 out of 10 times, they don't mind donating that to locals if the locals are really going to use it to plant food. And of course, you've got to buy all your own seeds and things like that. But there's even other ways you can do it, where the city will actually fund it, an organic community garden. So, I know it just takes time. I've been trying to get one up and going here for 2 years in Casa Grande, but, it takes time. It keeps going on the back burner, but eventually I think we'll have it. And then your idea, for the person who's working a lot. Now, what about, while we're on the subject of food, what about those who eat, let's say, beef? Before, when we used to see something stamped with USDA beef, that meant it was good food. Does that mean that this is not good food anymore? And we'll get to that question. We're going to take a short break. We're here with Barbara Peterson from Farm Wars. This is The Truth Denied, and we'll be right back after this short break. We're back with The Truth Denied. We're speaking with Barbara Peterson from farmwars.info. And we just rounded the corner here about the USDA. She had said earlier in the show that the USDA is actually really basically the criminal behind all of this. But, and she definitely has the information and documentation to prove that on her site, farmwars.info. So you want to check that out. Again, we're with Barbara Peterson. Welcome back to the show, Barb. Now, USDA being who they are, We were talking about food and so forth, and how people who are very busy or had 2 jobs due to the economy or don't have money, and how they could grow, like maybe start with herbs in the kitchen, etc. Now, as far as other foods that we consume as a nation, what about the beef? What
I'll
about
tell
it?
you, I will, unless I know that the cow has been raised on grass, hasn't been fed all the grain, hasn't been given all the injections, I won't touch it with a 10-foot pole. Number one, they're giving them all sorts of antibiotics. They're feeding them all sorts of grain, which they're not supposed to have anyway. It's not good for their digestion, and all that grain is genetically modified. You can try your organic grass-fed, and that's great. If you know the place, that's wonderful. No problem with that. But then what they're doing is the mega packers, the mega corporations, they're spraying all this stuff with ammonia so that you don't get bacteria. I'm not eating ammonia. I'm not eating their genetically modified garbage. And if an animal eats garbage, then that's what's going in their system. They're eating DNA from grain that is designed to horizontally transfer. And by horizontally transfer, okay, there's vertical transfer and there's horizontal transfer. Vertical transfer is like pollination. Horizontal transfer is, say, a soil organism gets hold of that foreign DNA and puts it into another organism. So that's what's going on with the horizontal transfer, and it's rampant. So if you have a cow eating genetically modified corn, that cow's DNA is going to be changed, and then you're eating that cow. Our Podpustai proved it was the genetic engineering process itself that atrophied the organs of the mice.
Oh my goodness. Listen, we're going to open the phone lines. The number is 218-339-8525. If you want to call in, we're going to take some calls right in this window for the next 10 minutes. So if you want to call in and ask Barbara a question, please call in. We'll take your call only for this window, though, for the next 10 minutes. Again, that number is 218-339-8525. I also say that in regards to food, it's interesting because CBS reported nonchalantly, by the way, last night on the news, that 50% of all supermarkets are selling chicken. I'm sorry, not 50%. All supermarkets are selling chicken. 50% of the chicken they're selling has E. coli bacteria. They actually said this on the news last night on CBS, like it was nothing. 50% of the chicken sold in your supermarket has the E. coli bacteria. Oh, why? And they already know it. And it wasn't a report like, hey, don't buy the chicken. It was, it's just like basically so people accept it. So, 1 in 2 chickens that you buy at the supermarket will have E. coli. And I don't know what this translates to. Because we don't have like massive E. coli outbreaks or anything like that. But, I just thought I'd drop that bomb in there. I just thought it was very interesting. Why isn't the USDA doing their job and eliminating that 50% of the chickens from our supermarkets that have E. coli? I don't understand. So, that's all. I don't even know what to say. But we do have a caller coming in, and I do want to ask about synthetic biology in a moment. We've got a call from area code 289. I believe it's Valerie in Ontario, Canada. Valerie, welcome to the show. Hello? Hello? Valerie, are you there? Well, I hear a little something there, but I don't know what's going on. So sorry about that, Valerie. If you want to try to call in again, we'll try to take your call because I can't hear you. But the synthetic biology aspect of this, what is that, and what is this transhumanism? People are getting really freaked out about this stuff. I've looked into it, but I'd rather hear it from you.
Well, from what I understand, transhumanists are basically working towards a singularity. And what the singularity is when man and machine meld together to become a better individual. Okay? The next step in our supposed evolution. Now, what synthetic biology and nanotechnology and biotechnology, this is where they all cross and they all, overlap each other. They're making synthetic skin. Okay, they're making, first off, what they're saying, and this synthetic skin is from, remember the spider goats?
Yes, I do. It's crazy, and if people don't know about it, go on YouTube, do a search on, just put spider goat, and go and look at what they're working with spider goats. And they're really spider goats. But go on. Yes, I do.
Mm-hmm. And what they do is they're genetically engineered to create in their milk a spider silk protein, and this is so strong that they're making bulletproof skin out of it. I'm not lying.
I know. I saw the documentary, Barbara. I know it's the truth. It's crazy. I was watching it just, and I even asked myself at the beginning of that documentary, you probably saw the same one, where I thought, well, wait a minute. Why are they making spider goats? And by the way, you have got to go. This is documented by the biologists that did it. It's not some, creepy, it's a really good documentary. But I thought to myself, why are they making spider goats? I mean, what would the purpose of that be? And of course, it's, with that, like you said, the spider silk, and it comes out in the goat's milk. And then I thought, well, what do we need spider silk goat milk for? And then, of course, with this bulletproof skin, okay, well, let's go there. What do we need bulletproof skin for, Barb?
Well, that's to cover the they're making artificial meat in a petri dish. Okay, what they say is, I'm just connecting these dots. What they say is this artificial meat is so, we don't have to kill any poor little animals, and we're going to have this artificial meat, and it'll be within 10 years, everybody will be eating this stuff. So they're forming artificial muscles. Okay, now what is a transhumanist agenda? The transhumanist agenda is to meld with the machine. Okay, they've already got something called a soul catcher chip.
Okay.
Okay, this soul catcher chip is supposed to record the essence of a human. I can't make this stuff up. It records all your thoughts, your ideas, supposedly, everything you've ever done. And the intent is to use the chip and create a person that is basically stronger, better than the normal human. Okay, maybe you're going to have somebody who can withstand 100-mile-an-hour wind without toppling over. Maybe you're going to have somebody who can lift up 400 pounds. Maybe you're going to have soldiers that are going to go on the battlefield.
There you go. That's what I'm thinking, soldiers. We've got Valerie in Ontario, Canada back. Let's see if we can get her on the line. Valerie, are you there? Hello? Maybe I just don't know what I'm doing over here in answering the phone. Valerie, are you there? Hello? I don't know why we're not being able to hear Valerie. Valerie, I'm so sorry if you hear us on the line. I just don't know, and we're just going to work this out. The producer is saying something, but I don't know why we can't catch your call here. Yeah, I don't know. Are you muted, Valerie, at all in Ontario? Maybe you muted yourself? Hello?
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, there you go, Valerie.
Okay,
see,
good.
We didn't give up on you, hon. Welcome to The Truth Denied. I'm Roxy, and, of course, our guest is Barbara Peterson. Do you have a question for Barbara?
I do, and I just want to tell you my middle name is Roxanne.
Oh.
My question is, and while I've been listening, it's very enlightening. I've been looking up some organic farms that
Valerie, if you
deliver
want to hold on,
produce.
we're going to go to a quick break. We're going to bring back Russ Tanner from the Global Skywatch. Barb's going to stick with us through the next hour. Valerie, if you want to hold on, honey, hold on, and we'll be right back. And thanks for hanging in there. This next hour is going to get real interesting. You're listening to the Truth Tonight Talk Radio. I'm your host, Roxy Lopez. We have Barb Peterson from Farm Wars. We have a caller on the line, and it looks like our caller continued to stay on the line, so we're going to bring her on. We also have Russ Tanner. So real quickly, Russ, let me get you on the bus here. Welcome to the show. Say hi to the audience, and then let's take this call from our call in Canada. How you doing, Russ? Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you, Roxy. It's a pleasure to be here.
Right on. Okay, sorry about that. That was a really quick, but we're going to hear more from Russ in a couple of minutes. So let's see if we can make this happen. Valerie, are you still with us?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Absolutely, we can hear you, and wonderful. Thanks for staying on hold all the way from Canada. So you were just saying to Barbara, go ahead and finish your statement.
Sure. I know. I appreciate all the information about food and many other topics. When it comes to water, I've heard some very disturbing things about even bottled water that we buy in the store. Any comments on water? I mean, personally, I don't drink tap water, but I recently discovered some disturbing things about some bottled water.
And Barb, did you want to take that question?
Well, I don't know how I would answer it. I don't use bottled water. I simply don't use it. I believe that the plastic bottles that the bottled water is in, when it's heated to a certain amount, I don't trust it. There are people that say, oh, they're safe, safe, safe. Well, I'm sorry, I don't believe everything I hear. And I do know that when bottled water is heated up, you can taste that kind of and smell that kind of plasticky in it, and there's absolutely no way I'm putting my mouth on anything like that. There was a reverse osmosis place that I went to when I lived in California that was in Placerville, and I would go and take a bottle and fill it up from there and use it because my well needed fixing at the time. I'm on well water at this point, and I've had it tested, and it is good water. The thing about water is you need to test it for toxins, for all types of things. And if you're going to get bottled water, I would definitely research the company, because not all companies are equal when it comes to bottled water. And if they're just, refilling bottles with tap water, well, you don't want that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And the RO, Valerie, I also use an RO system and have for 5 years. And so basically that's your next best thing. It's one of the best things. ROs reverse out quite a bit out of the water. And while we do have Russ on the show, Russ, do you have anything to add to water for Valerie's question?
That's a tough and a big question. I use well water, and I filter it through a gravity-fed filter device, and that's it. That's what I do.
Okay. All right. Does that answer your question? You're very welcome, Valerie.
Yeah,
hope you can listen to the rest of the show. Thanks for calling.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
You're welcome. Okay, and so now we've got Russ Tanner on the show, and Barb's going to stay with us and maybe interject at some point. Russ, welcome to the show. Russ is from Global Skywatch, and somebody I respect and admire very much, just as I do Barb Peterson. So very grateful to have you on the show. Thanks for taking the time. And Russ, for those listeners who do not know who you are, why don't you give us an introduction?
Sure. My name's Russ Tanner. I founded Global Skywatch not because I wanted to, but because I encountered chemtrails for the first time. It's actually the second time. I saw them on a vacation once. I was wondering what the heck that was in the sky out at El Capitan when I was taking some pictures. But in 2005, they started bombing our town of Jamestown, New York. I can taste them. I can smell them. I have a very sensitive sense of taste and smell. I don't know why. Sometimes I feel like I was born for this issue. But I immediately had to start doing something about it because I am suffering tremendously, and I've been supporting myself with herbs and supplements. And I've been following and trying to be a participant in getting the public aware of what's going on ever since 2005.
2005. So, yeah, and you've been doing a pretty good job of it. Now, on the front page of your website, you do talk, you have a write-up there regarding did you actually have a heart attack, Russ, or were you having all the symptoms of a heart attack?
I had a heart attack.
You did?
I did. I took an ambulance ride. My T enzymes elevated, and they confirmed that I had a heart attack. And by the pain, I can tell you I thought I was dead. And I'm a guy, I used to be a guy who used to ride my bike 10, 15 miles a day. I used to play racquetball in the hot Florida sun when I lived in Florida. I used to be very athletic. And my health deteriorated first with amalgam fillings back in 1995 and to 2000. Had my amalgam fillings removed in 2000, had a dramatic recovery. And then in 2005, chemtrails hit us, and I declined. So this heart attack thing was so out of character for me, but unfortunately, I have to protect myself wearing what I call a wet mask. And I wear that. In fact, I was wearing it the first hour while I was listening in to you and Barb Peterson talk, because they're hitting us hard tonight. They hit us hard last night. My heart attack happened after 2 days of not having to wear my mask, not being able to wear my mask, because I was in Bangor, which I'm about 40 minutes away from, Bangor, Maine, doing a bunch of errands and running around. And I couldn't have my mask on for 2 days, and they sprayed us horribly. So I took in a bunch of chemtrails, had terrible inflammation, and then that night, 12:30 Sunday night, Monday morning, my heart just started double timing, and I started having tremendous pain. I was able to get in the car, drove to a relative's house. Ambulance met us and took me to the hospital. I was in the hospital from Monday till Thursday afternoon, and they confirmed it was a heart attack. And guess what? Here's the important thing that people need to know. There was nothing wrong with my heart other than a little genetic murmur that everybody in my family has. Nothing wrong. My heart, they couldn't find anything. They ran all kinds of tests, but there was one thing that they'll never connect, that they could not connect to the heart attack, is my potassium levels were through the floor. And so my nurse came in, and she, with these horse pills, all these horse pills, I'm like, what are those? I always want to know what I'm taking. She goes, this is potassium because your potassium levels are low. Her voice went really low, and she looked at me like she was warning me, saying, your potassium is low. So guess what? Barium, which is pretty well established to be a component in chemtrails, depletes potassium from your body. Isn't that interesting?
I do think it's interesting, and I would like to speak to that a little bit, just because of the amount of emails that I'm getting, and actually, I'll be honest with you, some personal stuff going on. Now, people are experiencing cramping of their muscles, including myself. Leg muscles, arm muscles, and when every one of us has brought this up with our doctor, they're saying that it's because of low potassium. That's how you get cramping of the muscles. I'm not saying from running a 10K marathon. I'm saying just in general, we're getting, it's happening more and more over the last couple of years. Yep. And so the depletion of potassium is very evident. Now, of course, the area in which I spend a lot of the year in Arizona gets hammered by chemtrails. Arizona used to be a state where over 325 days of the year were, crystal blue skies. We have about 50% of the days overcast now because of the chemtrailing. So on an aesthetic note, I vote down for chemtrails, amongst many other reasons. But Russ, are you seeing that as well? Obviously you flushed out all your potassium. It sounds like you didn't even have any potassium level, zero, when you had your heart attack.
Yeah, it was very, very low. And I talk to people all the time. I talked to several people this week. Everybody's having cramping, tight muscles, a whole set of symptoms.
Okay, so it's not just me.
Oh, no.
Not just me and all the emails I'm getting. Okay.
No.
And while we have Barbara on, just real quick, Barbara, are you getting any type of these types of emails at all about people having cramping or any of that kind of stuff?
No, I haven't. I'm kind of on another end of it, but I'll tell you that makes a lot of sense, because if you don't have potassium, then you start cramping up, and I have to upload on potassium when my calves start cramping on me, and barium depletes potassium.
Right. That's exactly. Okay, there you go. So, Russ, back to your story. So you have this heart attack. Thank you, Barbara. And you have this heart attack, and you have a depletion of I almost said barium. Wow, where'd that come from? Anyway, because of barium. And what was the next step for you? So did you have to now, for instance, what's your source of potassium now? Is it through food? Is it through your supplements? Where are you getting your potassium from?
It's through both. You can get potassium through foods. I take pretty good doses of potassium through supplements. I can now feel. The hospital visit was very valuable for me because I had been having heart problems for years since the chemtrails happened and began in 2005. And I had been looking for what was it? What was the problem? And I really came down to, narrowed it down to a couple things, and one of them is inflammation. I have a very bad inflammatory reaction to the chemtrails, and a lot of other people do too. Not everybody does. I'm more sensitive than most people, but that was one of the things. But the hospital visit was valuable because I learned about the potassium, and I did not know that before. And so now I get my potassium from supplementation. And isn't it interesting that the FDA put restrictions on how much potassium you can have in a single capsule several years ago? 99 milligrams is the limit. So if you're getting over-the-counter potassium, you won't find supplements with over 99 milligrams in it. So you've got to take quite a few capsules. Now, you don't want to overload on potassium, but when you're being challenged with barium toxicity, for me, I can feel when my heart's low. I can feel that familiar pain kick in that I had that night and I had so many years previously.
What does it feel like?
It feels like a cold headache, but it's in my heart.
Like headache in your heart.
Like brain freeze, like you drink a cold drink too fast.
Yes.
Feels like that in my heart. Feels like there's oxygen depletion going on.
Okay.
That's exactly what it feels like. And when I pump up on potassium, I'll take about 800 milligrams, which means taking 8 99 milligram capsules of potassium. Within about 15 minutes, that pain starts to ease up. And then I also take taurine with it. Taurine helps the heart maintain its electrolytes, including potassium. So taurine is really good to take along with potassium.
Okay. And have you found, like what you were saying, again, on heavy chemtrail spraying days, you actually notice a difference now. At first when people were writing me in like a year and a half ago about all the ailments they were getting, basically upper respiratory and inflammatory, exactly what you're talking about, I thought people were just sort of, I don't know what I thought. I thought maybe people were exaggerating, to be honest. But then the more emails that I do get, I realize that not only is it close friends and family members now that are starting to say they're having this, and I'll ask them, has there been any spraying in the, chemtrailing? And they'll say, yeah, for the last couple, 2-3 days. And so there is a correlation with that, with the whole idea of illness or inflammation or an upper respiratory, et cetera. But I guess what I want to ask you is, what more are you seeing? Because the whole denial of what's in the chemtrails, I mean, some of the latest water samples in the last year are showing like no aluminum, very little barium. Have they switched up the game in what they're spraying?
Well, yeah. I mean, here's the lowdown on this. And nobody else I know is talking about this. And I think the reason is because I have a unique set of experiences and sensitivities that makes me born for this issue. I don't want to be. I'd really rather be doing other things with my life, but unfortunately, this is where I'm at, and I have a responsibility to talk about it. Have they switched the game up? First of all, there's about 7 different kinds of chemtrails based on their taste and smell. Now, I taste and smell chemtrails. I want people to understand it's not like some subtle thing that I just detect in there. It is overwhelming. Last night I slept 4 hours. I was able to take a nap this afternoon because they were hitting us with a type of chemtrail I call the blunt metallic. I kind of named them after their flavors. And when they hit us so hard like that, my business partner and other friends and family generally can sleep, although they might feel a few aches and pains and stuff, but I can't sleep. The taste is so strong, it's like you're spraying metal dust in my mouth, and I'm not exaggerating. So it's very, very pronounced. Have they switched the game up? Absolutely. There have been some new types. In April 2009, a new type was introduced that causes people to have sore throats, and it's being sprayed at high altitudes. And there's no question in my mind that it contains some biologic or viral elements to it. Okay, and I'm not a doctor. I'll say that I'm not a doctor, and I don't prescribe, diagnose, cure anything. I only express my opinion based on my own research. That's it. But throughout my life, whenever someone was about to get a cold, I noticed a day or two before somebody was going to get cold, if I got a whiff of their breath, and I'm embarrassed to say this, but I have to say this, it would burn my sinuses in a very specific way that I never experienced before. And then a day or two later, they'd be sick. I had a girlfriend years ago who I told her very nicely, I said, you've got a respiratory infection, you might get sick next couple of days, take some vitamin C, take some immune stimulators, blah, blah, blah. She got mad at me and left. The next day I had an apology note on the door on my car window because she had come down with an illness the next morning. So there's something about my hypersensitivities that I can detect that. Now in April 2009, I started getting that in the air, and it didn't increase and decrease rapidly like a sawtooth wave like the lower altitude spraying chemtrails do. You know, because the intensity ramps up and then slowly dies down and ramps up real quick and slowly dies down like a sawtooth wave. That's what it's called in electronics for those who know what a sawtooth wave is, if you were to graph it against time. What this is real slow and steady, and it stays at what I call about 20% intensity, and it burns my sinuses, and sometimes it's stronger, sometimes it's lower, but it doesn't ramp up and down real rapidly. It's real slow. And so I said this has to be higher altitude spraying. This was in April 2009. In May 2009, I flew to Florida and back, and I also drove to Florida and back to visit some family, and I was very curious, wondering, when I was in the aircraft, was I going to smell chemtrails? Are we going to be above the chemtrails because so many of them are low altitude, or am I going to smell that high altitude chemtrail? And sure enough...
Hold that thought.
Yep.
Hold that thought, Russ. We're going to take a short break. I'm sorry to interrupt you. And when we come back, we're going to talk about that high altitude chemtrail smell. We're with Russ Tanner, and he's from the Global Skywatch, and we still have Barbara Peterson. I'm Roxy Lopez with The Truth Tonight. We'll catch up with you in a sec.
American Freedom Radio. American Freedom Radio.
Hey, this is Roxy Lopez. I'm the host of the Truth Tonight talk show, which airs live every Friday evening from 7 to 9 Central, only on the American Freedom Radio Network. Join us. Listening to the Truth Tonight talk radio. This is Roxy Lopez, and we have some great guests today, Russ Tanner and Barbara Peterson. We've got Russ, who was just talking about being up in airplane. By the way, we're talking about chemtrails for anybody who's just joining the show at this moment. We covered GMOs, so if you want to go back to the beginning of the show and listen to it, it'll be archived in a couple of hours. But we were just talking about high-altitude tastes with what Russ had been experiencing. So, Russ, why don't you go ahead and finish your thought on that?
Sure. I was right near the end of it. In May of 2009, I got, just by chance, to test this theory and wonder if when I was flying in the planes at 32,000 feet, if I was going to be able to smell and taste chemtrails. And lo and behold, first few minutes of flying, I count 12 jets with trails behind them, and I smell the taste. When we reach altitude, they're about 1,000 to 2,000 feet above us. They're spraying chemtrails, and I can smell that new type of chemtrail, which I call it swamp water, because it smells and tastes kind of like algae. It smells like an algae fungal type of taste and flavor to it. And I assign these names carefully because I've had a sensitive sense of taste and smell all my life. So, it's kind of different to live this way, to have this. But, and it's a little weird, and I apologize, but it's just the way it is. But, so sure enough, I was thinking they were spraying this stuff at high altitudes that was giving a lot of people sore throats. And lo and behold, the way it happens here is when they spray real hard, they usually do that particular type. They'll go for about 7 to 10 days real hard, and then the pediatrician's offices are packed. Everybody's got respiratory infections. Everybody's got colds and flu for the next 3 weeks. And I've seen this happen over and over again. And I feel very alone telling people this because they can't taste and smell it. So it's like being able to see something that nobody else can see. Nobody else can make that connection. It's just up to them whether or not they believe me or not. And that's hard, you know.
Absolutely. You know, I want to interject something when you're talking about this upper respiratory and these infections, inflammatory and everything. You know, I received an email. I'm a correspondent with Dane Wigington, the biologist, and it's interesting that you're mentioning this because he says there's a part of I'm going to read to you. It says, atmospheric particulates are platforms that encourage radical proliferation of fungal growth, period. Couple this with the light scattering characteristics of the particles in question, and one has to has the perfect recipe for runaway fungal infections in all life forms. Not only is the Earth now encased in a membrane of such particulates from the 24/7 spraying, but the sunlight, now greatly diminished, can no longer kill off the out-of-control fungal explosion around the globe. Do you know anything about this? And if you do, make a comment, Russ.
Well, absolutely. Years ago, not that many years ago, mold infestations in houses were rare. You'd hear about it once in a while, and it was just this kind of weird, rare thing that happens. Today, it is off the charts. I have spoken to so many people who have mold infestations in their houses. I had, during real hard spraying a couple years ago right here, I had mold that started growing out of the drains of my sinks. I've never seen anything like it, but it correlated with the intensity of the spraying. And then for the last year, before there's been patterns to all this, but throughout 2010 it lightened up a little bit. I'm sorry, 2011 it actually got a little bit lighter. They backed off a little bit for a time, and then it went away. Also, trees. I've seen spots on trees all over the place, all over town. When trees are in Maine, it's supposed to be beautiful, and you have yellow and red leaves everywhere. There's these brown and black spots on all of the leaves of these huge trees. I've never seen anything like it before.
Isn't that something? And you know, and you wonder why people, especially those who are already prone to allergies, are just experiencing a whole lot of pain right now in certain times of the year with these, the bump up of this fungus. But anyway, you were going to talk about. For those who don't know, we're speaking with Russ Tanner from Global Skywatch, and we've got Barb Peterson from Farm Wars on as well. I was going to say, Russ, your website is globalskywatch.com.
That's right, yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought. Globalskywatch.com. And so those who want to follow in the conversation and take a look at some of Russ's work, go ahead and go to globalskywatch.com. We will have a video of this entire show and all of your everybody's contact information and everything we talked about on the show. But I was going to ask you, what are the different forms, you were going to say, of types of chemtrails, and what are you noticing? Like in 2000, let's say 2011, 2012, there's definitely a saturation level that the atmosphere has reached. I know that, but you're IDing this with behind the camera. So you want to share that information with the audience?
Absolutely. Like anything like this, when you get into it, you start discovering that it's a lot more complicated than you initially believe. And because I can smell and taste them as clear as day, there are at least 7 different types. Like, for instance, the very first type I encountered in Jamestown, New York in November of 2005. They were spraying a little bit before that, but that's when I found out what it was and saw it on a daily basis begin on a schedule. They were spraying the salty metallic type. I call it that because it tastes like salty metal, and it had a certain set of symptoms associated with it. For a little stretch, we had several months later, we had what I call the pesticide type because it smells just like your neighbor just sprayed their lawn with pesticide. And so to experiment and see if it was just something local, I drove from Jamestown, New York to Erie, Pennsylvania, which is an hour away, and almost about 2/3 of the way there, I could smell the pesticide smell the entire way. And this is on interstate. This is 75-mile-an-hour driving. So this was huge areas of this pesticide smell that covered. Now, they didn't do that long, and I suspect because online, everybody started talking about it. Everybody's like, do you smell the pesticides? Do you smell the pesticides? Everywhere. It's coming from the chemtrails. So I suspect that when people can smell it, they couldn't really continue using that type because it would get too much attention. There's another type they spray all the time now. It's intermingled throughout the week called, I call it drywall dust, because it feels and tastes just like you're in a really dusty room. And it has a set of symptoms associated with it that are unique as well. One of the worst types that they've really that they spray in combination with several other types, they spray this one daily right now. It's called the acetone type. And I've got a number of people who told me that they can smell it too. And it smells like acetone. That's the best thing. Acetone is like a chemical that you can use for paint thinning, and like nail polish remover has it in there, that kind of a thing. And that has a set of symptoms that are identical to mercury toxicity. And after doing research and a lot of putting pieces together, I'm asking myself, are they using petroleum products or acetone as a carrier for mercury, which is liquid at room temperature? Because the symptoms are identical. And mercury causes a whole multitude of health problems. In fact, about 200 of the most common diseases today can be traced to mercury. There's another type called the pharmaceutical type because it tastes like sleeping pills. If people have been in hospitals, a lot of people you can kind of taste or smell that druggy smell. That's kind of like a sleeping pill, for instance. That bitter taste. There's a particular type that they spray maybe twice a week. It's almost always at night. It's about 10 o'clock at night, and they'll hit us for about 2 to 4 hours with it real hard, and it hurts my heart. It caused me a lot of heart pain, and it tastes just like a pharmaceutical. There's the very common. This is one of the most well-known, is the sulfur type. People have been reporting tasting or smelling sulfur all over. That's probably the most common thing that we have right now, where people are reporting smells and scents and tastes in the air. And of course, one of the patents are for chemtrails describe using sulfur for geoengineering. Then there's another type called the blunt metallic, which is what we've been hit with for the last 30 some hours here. Real bad yesterday, real bad. Causes real bad symptoms, a lot of inflammation in me. My business partner gets real tight muscles, has magnesium and potassium depletion. So those are some of the basic types, and I'm glad to be able to get this out there. I've never been able to fully express this, but there are absolutely different types of chemicals or metal combinations that they're spraying. They're often sprayed in combination with each other, but I have been very meticulous in trying to identify the tastes and smells and know what their symptoms are when they spray. So hopefully that will help someone out there. And I neglected the iron type. There's one type that tastes like rust, which is iron oxide, and it tastes just like iron. And that brings up some interesting stuff that have been talked about, chemtrails with red blood cells and some really crazy stuff. But those are the chemtrail types, according to taste and smell, that I've experienced.
Right on, and I've quite a few of those. Now that you're saying it, it's interesting because I'm thinking to myself, wow, I've definitely smelt that. I've definitely tasted that. So, you're definitely on to something. I was going to say also, we've got, I don't know, about 20 minutes of the show left, 25 minutes. I'm going to open the caller lines if you don't mind, Russ. So it's 218-339-8525. So lines are open. Producer just let us know the lines are open. It's 218-339-8525. If you want to call in and ask Russ a question about your health or anything that you're spotting in your skies or anything we can do for you, just give us a call. We're friendly people. We won't bite your head off. So as far as this and thanks, Russ, for going down that, meticulous road. You did it so amazingly of what these different smells are: the sulfur, the iron, and aluminum. A lot of times people will write in and they say they taste their teeth feel funny when they rub their teeth together, and it's like an aluminum can or something like this. So So, Russ, what are you doing about this? Like when, as far as all these different, and when I say what are you doing, obviously your health gets affected. Our health gets affected by this in one way, shape, or form. I think a lot of times people don't realize how badly their health is. I think people are just getting used to having an upper respiratory, let's say, infection, or a cough that never goes away, or a sore throat that never goes away. Some of the other stuff that I'm hearing, and this is across the board, this trips me out, is ringing in the ears is one. And the other one's insomnia. I mean, just massive insomnia. Practically everyone I talk to, I'm not kidding you, if it's a colleague, if it's a guest for the show, like somebody who has nothing to do with chemtrails, okay, they have insomnia. I just spoke to a gentleman today here at the city in Casa Grande, Arizona, and he was saying that he has insomnia. He gets about 4 hours of sleep a night. He doesn't know why. He just can't sleep, and that's all there is to it. We weren't even talking about chemtrails. We were talking about a law. So what is this? And the ringing in the ears, this is coming across the board from people who are very young all the way up to people who are very old, and the insomnia factor. What is that, and are you coming across that, and what are some of the options that people have to kind of handle this?
Everybody is having some kind of problem, even if they don't relate it to chemtrails. I'm having a lot of people who rolled their eyes at me a few years ago coming now secretly, quietly saying, hey, what are you doing about this? And do you think this is related? The tables are turning. Let's talk about them. So you're talking about insomnia. Insomnia is a big problem that I had when I was mercury toxic. The day that I had my amalgam fillings removed in July of 2000, I had the best night's sleep in my entire life. And there are a lot of heavy metals, and mercury is one of them, that prevents you from going into deep sleep cycles, especially, now this is the important part, and you'll not hear this anywhere else. Nobody's talking about this. When you combine mercury with sugar, wheat products, or caffeine. Caffeine allows that mercury to travel into cell walls, across cell walls. It makes it more bioavailable so that mercury gets transported. Now, I believe that mercury is contained in some of the chemtrail types. This is my personal belief. I have dust tests that show elevated mercury levels. I'm getting information from different sources. Soil levels across the United States of mercury have been rising. This has been in mainstream media, and they've been trying to blame it on Chinese power plants, which has now been debunked. But it causes sleep problems. So if you have any mercury toxicity, which I believe everybody does now, you're going to have, depending on your genetics, you can have any of 200 different diseases start to manifest. Having insomnia is one of them. Having ringing in the ears, which is called tinnitus, is another. Now, what happens when you mix even the littlest bit of sugar or littlest bit of caffeine or tannins from tea, and you have mercury present, you cannot enter deep sleep cycles. This is also true of certain B vitamins. Experiment. I encourage people out there to experiment and keep a log and try taking B vitamin within 4 to 6 hours of going to bed, and try your different B vitamins and see if they keep you from going into deep sleep cycles. Does this may indicate mercury toxicity. Of course, you'll have to go get tested with your doctor and or your health practitioner. That's up to you and between them. Not something that I do, but just something that I did it myself and started seeing the connection. Ringing in the ears. I have this myself. It is directly related to the intensity of chemtrails in the air. I can tell you that 100% every single time they spray the chemtrail types that I believe have mercury, or they spray them along with another type, as long as there's mercury present, my ears start ringing. So what can you do about it? You can stay away from caffeine, sugar, wheat gluten producing products. But I will warn you, 2 sips of coffee can set you off the edge with tinnitus.
Is that right? That's amazing. We'll get some more answers on this when we come back. I want to hear more about this tinnitus ringing in the ears because of stratospheric aerosol spraying programs. You're listening to The Truth Denied. We'll be right back. You're listening to The Truth Denied. I'm Roxy Lopez, your host today, and we are speaking with Russ Tanner and the lovely Barb Peterson from FarmWars.info. And, of course, Russ Tanner's website is globalskywatch.com as well. We were just talking about the mercury poisoning and we just stumbled right into a a conversation that I want to keep going, which is the tinnitus, which is the ringing in the ears, and the association with, sleep deprivation. During the break, I just want you to know, the listeners, that Russ Tanner and Barbara Peterson and myself, we just all realized this for the first time. We all have this ringing in the ears thing. And so I think that's really coincidental that we all three have it. So, Russ, why don't you tell us a little bit more about it's an association with the chemtrails. So now we know that. Barb and I and Russ also agreed that the wave of this goes up and down. In other words, like sometimes the ringing's louder, sometimes it's softer, and I tend to agree with that. But Barb and I, with all the work that we do, never associated it with chemtrails. I mean, the frequency of the chemtrails. So what do we do about that, too? That would be the other question. And you were talking about the sugar, caffeine, and everything. Can you go over that one more time for us? Because I want to take notes on that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Me too.
Anything you can do to mitigate mercury. My tinnitus, I'll say this real quick, my tinnitus started when I got my amalgams in as a teenager, and I never thought twice about it. I just thought, oh, well, that's the way it is. Everybody must have this. That night that my amalgam fillings were removed, it went away and never came back for 5 years. And it was so loud. It got worse and worse and worse in my life. It was so loud, I almost couldn't get to sleep because of it. It was just screaming in my ears. That night it was gone. I never heard tinnitus for 5 years between June of 2000 or July 2000 and 2005 when chemtrails started. When chemtrails started, it came back with a vengeance, and it was always associated with the appearance of chemtrails, and the intensity was always modulated, that is, increased or decreased depending on the amount of sugar, caffeine, or wheat products that I had. Does that sound familiar? Does it sound like something that's associated with ADD, ADHD, autism? Because when those products are taken in association with mercury, when you have those food products that are in the presence of mercury, for me, what happened was hyperactivity, spinning thoughts, looping songs in my head, inability to focus and concentrate, aggravation, jitteriness, couldn't focus, all of those things that we associate with those childhood diseases that there's a big debate over whether or not it's caused by mercury, was associated by mercury, because the day that my amalgam fillings were removed, all of that, which was intense in me, went away. So getting to tinnitus, for me, what works is keeping the sugar at an absolute minimum, keeping caffeine or tea at an absolute minimum, and keeping your wheat products, the same wheat products that cause behavioral problems in children. Those are the wheat products you want to watch out, and that'll help control the tinnitus. And one thing people need to know about tinnitus is that there's a theory, which I believe, that mercury is an excitotoxin, and some other metals are as well, that stimulate those little cells that are connected to the little hairs that vibrate in your ear that convert to sound. Those cells get hyperstimulated, and if they're hyperstimulated too long, they die. And guess what? You'll never hear that particular pitch that was picked up by that hair again. What happens to our seniors when they get dentures? They start having tinnitus. It gets worse and worse. They start having sleep problems and a whole bunch of problems, and they eventually lose their hearing after having all this tinnitus. Why? Is it because the mercury that makes up the red coloring in dentures is causing the tinnitus, acting as an excitotoxin, killing those cells, and making them go deaf? Very serious issue. Tinnitus just seems like an annoyance right now, but I want people to think about what it's leading to. So I hope that helps.
It does. It absolutely does. I appreciate that. And then the sleep deprivation factor. I don't think a lot of people realize that that's an epidemic.
Absolutely. Absolutely. GABA, this is what I use. Melatonin helps me get to sleep. Your body will grow a tolerance to it, so you can use it for a week, and then you have to go off it. GABA is the only thing I've found that helps me with the racing thoughts that are associated with chemtrails. When the chemtrails are mild, I sleep like a baby at night. When they're medium or intense, I can't get to deep sleep. My mind is spinning. It's exactly like mercury toxicity. So GABA has helped a lot with that, and melatonin. Those are two things that people can try.
I tell you, people don't understand.
Go ahead.
that it's not just a little bit of ringing in the ears. It can get so intense and nothing helps. You can put your arm over your ear, you can put earplugs in, you can do anything you want, and you've got this constant just ringing in your ears, and it just keeps you awake. It's not just a benign thing. It's something that when it gets to that point, you just simply can't sleep and you can't even think.
Right.
It's quite annoying. And, just for the audience sake, the first time I figured out that it was my ears, see, I was telling my husband for a good year, do you hear that? Do you hear that? Because I really thought it was like electrical wires or something, in the neighborhood. And so I'd go, do you hear that real high pitch? And he'd say, honey, I don't hear it. And I'd say, oh, yes. You can't, right? And I'd say, just listen, because it's an electrical sound. And I'd say, and he'd, no. And then you know what? This freaked me out. I was taking a shower one night, and it was so loud. And I was like, my God, I can't believe my husband can't hear this. But I don't know what made me do this. I put both my fingers in both my ears, and then I realized the ringing was inside my head.
Yep.
Right. Direct stimulation of excitotoxin, those cells just getting overstimulated by the metals. Absolutely.
So there you go. And I don't have any amalgam fillings, and I don't know if I have, I don't know, I haven't been tested for mercury, but this is really good information for the public, because I got to tell you, you'll even see it. Now, I have my group on Facebook, Chemtrails Kill, and I know that both of you have seen that, and even Russ has participated in it at times. We're all so busy, I don't really have time for it, but point is we saw a thread, and I think Russ was on this, it was a couple of months ago. We asked a question about anybody feel any association, any sickness with chemtrails, and that thread went over to over 500 postings on that thread. And I'd say a good majority of the people mentioned sleep deprivation coupled with the ringing in the ears, with the tinnitus. So I think that's, I don't know. I'm saying, and I did look it all up. It is an epidemic. Sleep deprivation's been an epidemic for over 15 years, but it's getting worse now. The numbers are going up. So melatonin, and what is GABA? You said GABA?
Yeah, GABA-linolenic acid. It is helps your nerves conduct. It slows down the nerve conductation, so to speak. It helps slow down the electrical signals in your central nervous system, so that your body naturally produces it, but there's something about mercury and possibly other heavy metals that doesn't regulate it properly, interferes with the regulation of that. So GABA has helped me tremendously with the spinning thoughts and sleep issues.
Wow, that's okay, great. And then can you ever get rid of tinnitus? Because I know when you go to the doctor, they tell you that there isn't really anything you to do. I know there's a product out there, and I'm not recommending this because I've never tried it, but the listeners may have heard of it, and my guests may have heard of it, called Quietus. Have any of you ever heard of this?
Not familiar with it, no.
Yeah, I've heard the commercials. It's called Quietus, and apparently if you take this, and I always wanted to know what was in it. It's not a drug; it's an over-the-counter. But I always wanted to know what was in it, because when you take the melatonin and GABA for racing thoughts and melatonin for sleeping, does that also reduce the ringing in your ears as well, Russ?
No, it really doesn't seem to affect it, no.
Okay, so really there's nobody that's come across anything that can really help with the ringing in the ears factor.
Apart from stopping chemtrails, which I urge everyone to do, I don't know of anything. No.
Right. We need to heal the problem and not the symptom. And yeah. So, yeah, I completely agree with you. What are some of the ways that people can fight chemtrails? What's something they can do about it?
Step one, tell everyone, and do not be ashamed, because no matter how many times they roll your eyes, they will be coming to you eventually and asking what you know, because people are waking up and they're getting afraid of what they don't know. So be educated, be ready to give people good answers, and don't be afraid to publicize it. Then we need to start working on legal resolutions. I'm not sure what's going to finally come down to bring an end to this, but there is a lawsuit that I'm trying to find out. I tried to find out more about it today, but I didn't get to connect with the person who's in charge of it. There are people going in front of their city councils. City councils are being sprayed. Your politicians are being sprayed. Most of them don't know about this. Tell them. Write letters to all the attorneys that you know. Can you imagine if we had a whole nation full of angry attorneys? Oh, boy. So publicize it and tell people in power, no matter how much they seem to ignore you, you're making more of an impact than you think. That's what I would start.
That's good advice, and we've got like a minute and a half left here. So what about you, Barb? Any last parting words to the audience?
Well, I'll tell you, a lot of people that if you don't have enough, a whole heck of a lot of money and say, oh, well, I couldn't possibly do anything. Yes, you can. Look up natural remedies, anything you can, anything to get out of genetic modification. Just learn, and spread the word.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you, and that's what we do on these shows as well, and thank God there are station owners that allow us to do this. So I'm thrilled to death. I want to say thank you both for coming on the show. We'll put the video up in a few hours, and it's been an absolute pleasure having you. Again, we had Russ Tanner from GlobalSkywatch.com, Barb Peterson from FarmWars.info, and, of course, I'm Roxy Lopez. This is The Truth Denied, and we do have a website called The Truth Denied. Join us on Facebook on Chemtrails Kill. And next week we've got a couple of guys running for Congress coming on the show, Zach Grady and Steve Sussman out of Austin, Texas, and they are fighters as well. They are mad as hell about these chemtrail issues, and they're coming on the show to talk about Agenda 21, chemtrails, GMOs, and the whole nine. Agree with me that when we're referring to SAG, which is the aerosol spraying programs and so forth, or the chemtrails or geoengineering, whatever anybody wants to call it, I call it chemtrails because that's what I call it. But anyway, the nanoparticles that are being used are supposedly, the aluminum and aluminum particles. So let's start there with the aluminum. Now, aluminum, obviously, we've got a lot of reports about Alzheimer's. Aluminum in the brain, goes right into the system. We don't know that if it's being caused by chemtrails, but we do have a real uptick in the numbers of Alzheimer's disease, along with many others. But let's say with this nanoparticulates that are in the chemtrails, and obviously toxifying the human body, etc. What else are we looking at as far as the contents of what nano-aluminum is used for, and how does that play into, the crops, let's say?
Well, okay, the aluminum, let's talk about, aluminum and how it gets into our system. Well, I found a connection between fluoride and aluminum. Fluoride, which is being put in our water supply, and the aluminum, which is being sprayed, goes into the water supply, and then the fluoride allows the aluminum to cross the blood-brain barrier. Uh-huh.
And what does that mean in layman's terms?
It means Alzheimer's.
Gotcha.
Because the aluminum is, it doesn't want to do too much. But when it combines with fluoride pushes it right through into your brain and specifically can, I won't say it causes, I'm not a doctor, it can cause Alzheimer's, and there are instances where it's been proven that that's what happens. So the willy-nilly spraying of aluminum all over the place and the into the fluoridated water, it's a two-part mix. I don't think any of these things are actually intended as just this one thing is going to do it. It's mixes of things. It's 2- and 3-part mixes. Okay, mm-hmm. We've got the fluoride in the water. That is doing certain things. That is making us complacent, it's making us sick, it's hurting our teeth instead of benefiting them. But what people don't understand is if you take a combination of that aluminum, nano-aluminum, being sprayed out of the sky into that fluoridated, through a series of events, I had to start studying genetically modified organisms, and one of the main reason I did was because I had developed a very bad skin reaction, and this skin reaction started on my leg, went all the way up, crossed my shoulders, down my other leg. Roxy, I was in a mess. This was like the worst case of poison oak, oozy, itchy that you've ever seen in your life. It kept me awake. I didn't even want to live. It was horrible. So I stopped eating, and I had to start researching and finding out what I could eat. So I started with water, and I lost 60 pounds. I had raw fruits and vegetables, and then I started looking at my processed foods, and somebody told me about GMOs, and I started researching that. And then I got with Susan Bardosh, which is our Pod Pustai's wife and partner, and he was famous for 1996 actually being the whistleblower on genetically modified potatoes. So he was the first one. He was the guy that got me, to where I am, him and Susan. So, and I started understanding, and then I started realizing, I started introducing foods into my diet a little bit at a time. And every time I ate something that was for sure genetically modified, guess what? I started to break out again. So there's a connection there. And then I started understanding that, just about everything I had been told was a lie, and nothing was as it seemed. So then the research just started growing from there. Basically, I buy hardly any processed foods whatsoever. If it's processed, I have to go to great lengths to do the research on the companies and find out what I'm buying, who I'm buying it for. And I have been skin disease free now for several years. So it was a matter of necessity.
Understood. Now, just a quick question for you. When you say that you had these breakouts and so forth, now this isn't to be confused with Morgellons disease, correct?
Okay, here we go. This is my question.
Sorry.
Okay, let's just jump right in with both feet, shall we?
Okay.
This is what's going on. I did the research and did it. Now, on Morgellons, I had some of the symptoms, and some of those symptoms is a horrible, itchy, open sore that simply will not go away. Now, I did not have any of the fibers coming out of my skin. Now, I related.
The American Freedom Radio Network proudly presents, live from Phoenix, Arizona, The Truth Denied Talk Radio with host Roxy Lopez. Join us here every Friday from 7 to 9 Central for topics you won't hear on mainstream news, such as chemtrails, GMOs, Morgellons disease, and much more. Humanity is 7 billion strong. We are the majority. If you would like to speak to the host, the call-in number is 218-339-8525. And now, live from the Valley of the Sun, your host, Roxy Lopez.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Truth Denied Talk Radio. I'm your host, Roxy Lopez. We are live from Phoenix, Arizona. And I'm real excited to introduce you to a couple of people today. By the way, the last show that we did, which was the very first show we ever did on American Freedom Radio, was absolutely spectacular. In our archives on our website, thetruthDenied.com, oh my gosh, it's blowing up. It has stirred up a great deal of controversy. So for those of you who are listening tonight, if you like that show, there is more of it on this show. We just are ever expanding our knowledge base here in regards to Morgellons disease, chemtrails, GMOs. We have an expert on today for the first hour. We're going to be asking Barbara Peterson from farmwars.info. So if you want to go onto her website, that's farmwars.info. And she is an amazing woman, activist. We're going to hear all about it. The second hour, we're going to have Russ Tanner from the Global Skywatch. He has his own story regarding geoengineering, SAG programs, etc. This is a really big picture, and I hope that we are doing a good job of informing you, the public, in relationship to many, many of these issues that really all sort of are colliding right now. Geoengineering has everything to do with GMOs, has everything to do with weather modification and the droughts or severe weather we're experiencing. And of course, this all comes under the nice umbrella of what I call the New World Order agenda. So this is a global agenda. That's why you're seeing it all over the world. Anyway, I really would like to welcome to the show and let her do the talking, and I'll shut up. Welcome to the show, Barbara Peterson. How are you? Hello? Okay, I just got a message that Barbara Peterson was cut off, and our producer's getting her back on the air. So hold on just a moment. Seems to be happening a lot in the activism communities, by the way. I'm seeing a lot of this, and our producers just let us know that she is back, and we're going to keep getting her back. Barbara, welcome to the show. What happened?
Hi, Roxy. Hey, I don't know. I hope it wasn't user error, and it might have been.
Oh, wow. Shh, don't tell. we need to make this deep and dark from a secret location. Barbara, welcome to the show. And before I even have you go any further, I just want to thank you for taking the time to join us this evening. I know that you are super, super busy, and I just have to thank you. Thank you for being such a great comrade out there. Really appreciate it.
Well, Roxy, I always love talking with you, and it's so important, I feel, to get with people of like mind so we can go ahead and share the information that we've received so we can just get the word out. And you do such a great job of doing that, and I love your new format. It's great.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it seems like the listeners really, really dig it. It was just, the right time. I'm so grateful to be part of the American Freedom Radio family now. It's just been really great. I didn't mind where I was either, but it's just the Truth Denied is experiencing some growing pains right now. So, hey, what can I say? So, Barbara, for those listeners who are not familiar with you and your organization that you had and run, which is Farm Wars, and for those of you who want to follow on the internet, it's farmwars.info. But for those of you, before we really jump into the nitty-gritty of the right now, because it's getting pretty spooky out there as far as the control factor goes with Monsanto and these new seeds and everything. But before we jump into that, can we get a little bit of a background from you, how you got into this activism, when it started for you, just a brief summation of how you got to be, the famous Barbara Peterson that you are.
Famous? I don't think so. In my own mind. Oh, anyway. No. But I actually got into this out of necessity. I worked for the Department of Corrections for 10 years, and after 10 years, let me tell you, it was enough. And I came out here to Oregon, and what I had to genetic modification. And I believe that it's the process of the genetic modification that actually does this, or it could have been the toxins that go in it. But your guest last time I listened, and his name was Dr. Will Spencer, and he had mentioned that there are overlapping technologies. And that is so true, because all of these technologies, biotechnology, nanotechnology, synthetic biology, they're all overlapping, and they're all being used. And generally, if one is being used, the other is being used right along with it. So we've got all of this stuff that's hitting us. We've got the chemtrails. They're using nano materials in the chemtrails. And nanomaterials are so tiny that they can get in just about anywhere. We have absolutely no idea what these things are going to do. Now, is it possible that through the overlapping of synthetic biology, nanotechnology, and biotechnology, that our systems are being overloaded with this stuff, and certain people are developing that type of a reaction to it, to where these synthetic fibers start coming out. I believe that's absolutely possible.
Yeah, and you're not the first one either. You know, we've spoken before on the show several times in the past 12 months about, the idea that genetically modified organism is the disease, is Morgellons. That Morgellons is a genetically modified organism disease. And, of course, the genetically modified foods. But, you said something about in reference to what Dr. Spencer had said, the overlapping bio, nano, synthetic, and so forth. Can we hammer those out one by one? Can we talk about what is the bio part? You've already kind of alluded to what the nano part of it is. Nano is basically, for those who don't know, is just it's a size. A nano is referring to a size of something. Do you know what size that is? All I know is that it's not identifiable by the human eye.
Oh, yeah. It's
a nanoparticle. I
can't remember. It's like something, I don't remember offhand. It's so tiny. It's like 0.001. I'm probably not right on that, of a millimeter. It's so absolutely tiny that
well, you can breathe it, right?
You can breathe it, and it'll go straight into your organs.
Right.
Into everything. It goes into your bloodstream.
Well, and wouldn't you